Are you sick and tired of being a slave to a filthy habit? Are you tired of waking up every morning thinking, I've got this beat, only to fail time and time again? The average smoker fails 30 times before they're successful. Do you finally want to be rid of smoking forever, for the rest of your life? Well, you've come to the right place. I'm Ted Bradley, quit smoking specialist. I've helped over 8,000 people quit smoking for the rest of their life. I have a 95% success rate. Today in this video, we're going to go over item number 2 in my very successful ebook, How to Prepare Your Mind for Quitting Smoking for Life. Item number 2 is addiction or habit. What is smoking? Or is it both? And at the end of the video, I'm going to give you some very practical tips that you can do to finally beat this from this point of view. How to frame smoking in our mind. Is it addiction or is it habit? So let's jump right in. Addiction or habit. The first thing we have to do is we have to define our terms. So the first term we need to define is addiction. What is an addiction? Forget about all the definitions you can find out there. They have all the same basic principles. So addiction, essentially the definition we have is, it's a brain disorder. It's not just any brain disorder. It's a brain disorder of the particular part of our brain, the part of our brain that deals with pleasure stimuli and reward. So it is a brain disorder of that particular part of the brain, but it has this quality of adverse consequences. And what that means is that we stimulate that part of our brain for pleasure and reward, even though we know that the consequences of it are not good for us. That is a really good practical definition of what an addiction is, okay? It has this quality of reinforcing the bad behavior. Now, there's tons of types of addictions, and there's tons of reasons behind it. We can go into them. Behavioral, genetic, environmental. In regards to smoking, we don't even need to go there to figure this out, and you'll understand why shortly. So what we do need to understand is primarily it's a biochemical response to an external chemical. Addiction under this definition is essentially somebody who takes a drug or an exterior chemical. Nicotine is a chemical, and it's a biochemical response in our brain to that chemical. And not only a response, but it's a strong response. And we're going to get to why that is very key. Next, we need to understand habit. What is a habit? Okay, a habit is a routine behavior that is repeated regular and it's unconscious. That's the definition of a habit. It's not the same thing as an addiction. It's a routine behavior, like breathing, like walking, like talking, like eating. We do it over and over and over again. We do it every day without fail, time and time again. Okay, so a habit is a routine behavior that is repeated and regular, and it occurs at the unconscious level in our mind. That's a habit. Okay, essentially the main point I really want you to get out of this definition, that it's a fixed way of thinking, right? Or a way that we will ourselves, or a feeling acquired through this repetition, okay? It's not biochemical in nature. It's not a biochemical response to an external chemical. It's biochemical in the sense of it happens in our unconscious mind, which is chemical. But the primary driving force, it is not a biochemical response to an external chemical. It's internal, okay? So essentially, what is the real difference then between addiction habit in regards to smoking and smokers, okay? Addiction is primary biological. It's external. It's external to us. We are responding. Our brain is responding to an external chemical, and we are addicted to it, even though it has negative consequences. A habit is primarily mental. It's internal. The control is internal. It's a learned behavior. People that have addictions have habits. Sure, everyone has that. People who have habits, some of them have addictions. But the difference is many people don't have addictions, but they still have habits, okay? So let's really break this down so we can really get the important distinctions here and figure out what we have. Okay, so the first thing we need to think about of addiction here, you'll see here at the bottom of the screen, is that addiction is a continuum. What that means is when we have an addiction, it's not like It's all the same. There's no equivalency between addictions. Some addictions are really strong and our biochemical response is really strong. And other forms of addictions are really weak. So the question becomes is, we know nicotine is addictive, but where does it fall on this continuum, in the spectrum of addiction? The best way to understand that is to compare a smoker to a drug addict. And we're going to use a heroin addict as our example for comparison purposes. So there's different qualities. They call them qualities to an addiction. So let's look at these qualities and compare and contrast and figure out, is this an addiction or is it a habit that we have? First thing is serious withdrawal symptoms. The heroin addict. If you're a heroin addict and you take the needle away from a heroin addict, what happens? They fall to the ground. They have epileptic-like seizures. They foam at the mouth. They puke. It may kill them. The withdrawal might kill them. They need medical intervention. Okay? So on the continuum, that's on the strong side. So that's a really good indicator that that is a real addiction. That's one of the qualities. What happens if we take lighter away from a smoker? They get irritable, angry. They may get depressed. Biochemically, sometimes they might get lightheaded. Some people get a headache. Okay, on the continuum of a biochemical response to an addiction, where does smoking fall? On the weak side. Because if you even listen to what I just said and think about it, angry, irritable, short-tempered, they're all things of the mind and are behaviors. They're not a chemical reaction like a heroin addict falling on the ground and dying. When you quit smoking, you are not going to fall on the ground, convulse, foam at the mouth, puke, and almost die. You will not require medical intervention, I promise you. Smoking is on the weak side. It barely registers as an addiction. 2, tolerance. Our body develops a tolerance. Heroin addicts, they call it chasing the purple dragon. They shoot up, they get high. They want to get back to that same height again. So they have to take more of the drug. Okay? Think about that. They have to take more of the drug. It's very pronounced in pill poppers. They're popping a pill, then they're popping 2, then 4, then 8, then 16, and then they need to go to detox. They need to detox, medical intervention, to get off of it. Think about nicotine. When we ingest nicotine, this thing of tolerance and requiring more to get back to the same place. You probably smoke 20 cigarettes a day. The average smoker smokes 20 cigarettes a day. And you've probably taken about 20 drags on a cigarette, right? So 200 to 400 times a day, you're going like this, okay? You are inhaling a ton of cigarette smoke, okay? Tolerance. But you're only smoking 20 a day. Why aren't you smoking 40 tomorrow? And then 80? Because it doesn't have the same quality of an addiction. Whatever you smoke, you just basically generally smoke that. You might smoke a little bit more if you get a little stressed, but generally you smoke the same amount. It doesn't have the same quality of a drug. It doesn't meet number 2. It's on the weak side. It barely registers as an addiction. The third one, once ingested, people desire it very strongly. Think about that for a second. So the first time someone does crack cocaine, they wake up the next morning and their mouth is wired for it. The first time you had a cigarette, it tasted terrible. You didn't wake up the next morning going, oh my goodness, I have to get me more of that. That's not what happens. Smoking is on the weak side of addiction. Lastly, I really want you to consider this. Secondhand smoke. Think of the 70s and 80s and 90s when everyone smoked. McDonald's had ashtrays in them. Airplanes, you could smoke in your seat. Everybody smoked. And there were still non-smokers. And non-smokers would walk into these smoke-filled environments like bars and restaurants. And if it was truly addictive, they'd go, what's that smell? Oh, I gotta get me some of that. They didn't do that, non-smokers. They were offended. Just think about this. Really think about it. All of these non-smokers are inhaling enough secondhand smoke to get lung cancer and die. They're inhaling enough secondhand smoke to kill themselves. Non-smokers are inhaling enough cigarette smoke, secondhand, to develop lung cancer and die. But they're not inhaling enough to get addicted. It's not an addiction. It fails on almost every category of a real addiction. It is not an addiction. It's a habit. It's a habit, something that we do over and over and over again. You have a habit, not an addiction. So what should we do? Here's the key points I want you to get. These are the takeaways for today. We have to reframe how we hold it. If we keep telling ourselves, I'm addicted, I'm addicted, I'm addicted, we are putting our power external to ourselves. We are putting the power out there. We can blame the addiction. It's not us, it's the addiction, it's the addiction. There is no power out there. So we need to reframe it and tell the truth. We have a habit. We have a habit of going smoke, feel good, smoke, feel good, smoke, feel good, smoke, feel good, doing this 200, 300, 400 times a day, decade after decade. We just created a very super powerful habit, okay? So tell the truth and then ask yourself, does the story serve you? If you want to argue with me and tell me that, look, it's an addiction. Okay, fine, it's an addiction. It's so weak, it barely classifies as an addiction. But yes, but does that story serve you? No, tell the truth. Because if we tell the story and we tell the truth, I have a habit, a very super powerful habit. It brings the power internal. Because we can change our mind. We can change our mind. It is the simplest thing to do. Change your mind to change your life. The story that serves us is to tell the truth, and that smoking is a super powerful habit. It's not an addiction. Not in really any real sense of the term and what it really means. Smoking is addiction. If you want to know more, and if you're tired of smoking, you want to quit for the rest of your life, I can help you. Join my Quit Smoking for Life program. Subscribe to my Facebook page. Subscribe to my YouTube channel. Reach out to me. I'm a phone call and email away. It's not hard to find me. Reach out to me and begin your journey to quit smoking for the rest of your life.